Welcome to Creative on Purpose, conversations about making a better living and a bigger impact by defining, developing, and delivering the difference only you can make. I'm Scott Perry, Chief Difference Maker at Creative on Purpose. If you're ready to get clearer about who you are and closer to what you really want in life, visit creativeonpurpose.com to start playing your game on your terms without compromise today. Let's meet today's guest. Howard, welcome to the broadcast. Please tell our viewers who you are, what you're up to these days, and where can people go to learn more about you and the difference you're making?
Yeah, so my name's Howard Gotson. I'm the CEO of Capitalogixs. And interestingly, I've been the CEO of an AI company since 1991. So pioneers often get arrows in their back and blood on their shoes, but sometimes they get lucky, and it's a really good time to be in AI.
That's fantastic. Well, the first question is always I'm always interested in the backstory, the origin story of how you came to be doing this thing that you're doing, especially since you've been doing something that everybody thinks just happened yesterday for a long time. I'm guessing little 9-year-old Howard didn't wake up one morning and say, you know what I want to be when I grow up? I want to build in this AI space. So how did you come to be doing this thing that you're doing right now?
So I have been a technology entrepreneur since 1991. Before that, I was a corporate securities lawyer, and I woke up every day, put a tie on, and went to work with lawyers. And surprisingly, I didn't like that, but I loved my clients. And one day, right after I made partner at the firm, I was looking in the mirror and I thought, this can't be what I always wanted, right? And I realized that I envied my clients because they were entrepreneurs, and I didn't like my partners because they were lawyers. And what could I do? And the answer was become an entrepreneur. I had already been speaking about technology to entrepreneurs. I got my start as a lawyer, but going to tech conferences like Comdex and Macworld, talking about how someday business would be automated. And over time, the goal was to suck less, right? So in business, things often aren't the way that you want them to be. And I started to recognize that the goal is to kind of imagine what you want and then think about it can't happen unless, right? So there's bottlenecks or constraints. And if you can think back enough, originally I used a technique where I would take this bigger future concept and say, so what would the midpoint look like? And then what would the midpoint between there and here look like? What could I do in the next year? And it was a great way before product management existed to think about the customer journey, right? The kind of path along the way. Over time, I've invented a framework we use internally that I call capability prototype product platform. And what it basically says is, since the beginning of time, technology has been adopted the same way. It starts with that caveman part of your brain saying, does that help me do what I already do? And if not, so what? Who cares? If you can't answer the question, does it help somebody do what they want to do? Then the answer is it's not worthy of anything. But as soon as you satisfy that, right, it's like Legos, and you're building these little capabilities, and each capability has to help you do what you already do, but you're measuring it in terms of efficiency, effectiveness, or certainty. Is it helping you save time? Is it helping you save effort? Is it helping you win more often? And if not, again, so what? Who cares? And it's a very quick death. And many technology companies suffer quick death. But once you get to the point where you can do something reliably, then the next question is, well, what could it do, or what should it do? How do I add new capabilities to do something better? And a prototype is where you and a team achieve a result that and you can start to do it, maybe not simply, but repeatedly and reliably. And it becomes a product when people you don't know can achieve that result without your help. And it has to get simpler and simpler because you're never going to lose money underestimating the intelligence or the desire of the public to solve the problems or hurdles you went over. So in a sense, the product is when you get enough of these capabilities put together so that it becomes simple, repeatable, consistent, and scalable.
Mm.
And then it becomes a platform when people you don't know start to use those capabilities to build upon and do things that you didn't anticipate. And each one of those stages is kind of a 10x in possibility. But you have to start at the beginning. The mistake most people make is they think about all the stuff they don't want and they try to automate the pain away. But automation and innovation is hard and expensive. And by the time you do that, there's lots of other stuff that's annoying you. And activity is not progress if it's not moving you in the right direction. So it's much better to actually think about that bigger picture thing you want and figure out how to start to move towards accomplishing it. There's always a gap between the ideal, what you're looking for, and where you are. And if you measure how far you are from that, you'll always feel bad. But if you start to measure backwards, how much progress am I making? Is there momentum moving in the right direction? The truth is, inevitability is moving in the right direction and not stopping. As long as you're moving in the right direction and you don't stop, you will ultimately achieve and exceed those goals. So you have to keep your chin up and continue to think about more of what you want.
That's so much good stuff there. Our mutual friends, Nick Peterson and Dan Nicholson, talk about this process of micro-stepping. And it sounds like you have these processes that help people micro-step their way from where they are to where they want to be. And I love that. I do want to just note real quickly here that there will be a QR code in the comments for people that want to connect with Howard at Capitalogixs.com. One of the things,
but
go ahead.
In a sense, they can also text AI to the number I gave you.
Yeah.
And that number.
I've got it. 972-992-1100.
Right.
And we'll put the number in there as well. So one of the things that you said at the very beginning, Howard, I think is actually a thread I'd like to pull on a little bit, because what you said is something that I hear from many of my clients. I am a successful doctor, lawyer, highly trained, educated professional, and I'm not happy doing what I signed up to learn how to do.
But you actually said something really important. You said, I am. And I am is an identity block. And so I am a technology entrepreneur. So I don't self-identify as a lawyer. Part of what we do with technology is I run a fully autonomous hedge fund. So Capitalogixs was the name of this thing that grew into trading systems and then systematic trading, and then cash and risk management and asset allocation. And those are kind of the building blocks for a lot of what we did. And ultimately it got to the point where we have a truly autonomous hedge fund that literally chooses what markets to trade, what techniques to use, how much risk makes sense given what's happening in the world, an allocation strategy that puts money in things that are working, and continues to learn and grow and get better. Exactly. And one day I was sitting in a room and I thought, behind the scenes, there's front stage and there's backstage. And so front stage, I look like a hedge fund. But backstage, I don't identify as a hedge fund manager. I don't want to do any of the things that a hedge fund manager has to do to be a hedge fund manager. At first, I didn't want to be a trader. Then I didn't want to be a portfolio manager. Now I didn't want to be a hedge fund manager. And it's really hard as you continue to build these things and you keep saying, but I'm not this and I'm not that, right? What did I want to be? And I realized that behind the scenes, the strategic byproduct of all this effort was that we had built all these capabilities that we linked together. And I said, so it's kind of like we have an insight engine. We have this collection of algorithms and equations and automations, and like if it was a Charlie Brown movie, it's all the stuff that the adults say that's like wah 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 wah. Well, I'm not that either, right? And nobody actually cares about what you as an entrepreneur do. They care about what they get. And so this idea of I built an insight engine, wouldn't it be cool if instead of looking at the golden egg, right? The hedge fund was the golden egg. And every day I measured it and I wanted to see, is it more valuable? How much did it grow? But the insight engine was the goose that laid the golden egg. And I went, I could use these same tools, techniques, skills, the way we do this, the way we do that, to automate and improve or technology enable or AI enable almost any business. And so I said, the hedge fund is really a joint venture between the technology platform and the group that says, I want to run money, right? And in a sense, it's a collaboration, and the technology is replacing what used to be people. So it's a digital who, right? And it does the how, but it's a digital who that makes this thing better. And I started to say, the insight engine can actually produce digital who's to expand what's possible in almost any business. Maybe that's my business. And so I'm back to technology entrepreneur, but just at a higher level. And now it's, we create capabilities that allow us to create products on demand or businesses on demand to respond to these massive opportunities to AI enable or technology enable ideas, products, or businesses.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. You actually answered the question I was arriving at, which is we have this thing that we talk about in our community about the identity trap. Sometimes we overly fixate or attach ourselves to a specific role or goal that we have when we are actually all many splendored things with multiple possibilities and interests in that and evolving roles and goals.
So
I love
wait. A role and a goal are both nouns. And, you might say, well, thanks, Captain Obvious. But your role and a goal is a noun, but the way that you achieve or you can be that thing is with verbs. And so you actually have to understand how to align your strategy of becoming more and more the role and goal by more and more the verbs that you do. And I call it a 3-word strategy. But basically for me, it's understand, challenge, and transform. And if I look at almost any stage of my business, that's how I do what I do. But the words that I use to describe myself can either be timely, and by that I mean related to what I'm doing right now, opportunistic, which is kind of I lift my chin a little bit and say, what could I do or what could I be? Or timeless, which is even a step higher that says, even if I think back to my first entrepreneurial foray for me, which was in middle school or in high school, I sold stereos door to door. In college, I sold stereos and tapes on the quad. In business school, I had a business where we built databases. And then I started a technology company. But the bottom line is there's some part of me that has always thought about how do I use technology to solve problems at a scope and scale that most people didn't think of, because it gives you what I call time arbitrage. If you recognize an opportunity and you can take definitive action while other people are still guessing and taking tentative action, you have a big advantage. And so as soon as I understood that that was my strategy, it's how do I do that more, better all the time? And then in a sense, it didn't matter what the business was. I was still being me, doing me, and it didn't feel like a change. It was me being me here. It was me being me here. It was me being me here. But it became an evolution where I could get better rather than it felt like I was competing with myself. All of a sudden, the things that I was good at started to communicate, coordinate, and collaborate to allow better.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I totally agree and resonate with this idea that, you know, these fixed things like identity or destination can get in the way of our progress, because the progress is actually in the process, the strategy, the things that you were talking about.
But the question to ask yourself is, how do I chunk high enough that that word that I'm saying, whether it's a noun or a verb, would have been useful to me 5 years ago, but I can imagine it being useful in 5 years, even if the situation has changed.
Yeah.
And when you get to the point where you've got alignment of your nouns and verbs, then you can play at full speed, because even a course correction is still moving in the right direction.
Love it. That's really, really powerful. Well, I know that one of the tools that you're using to help automate these things and so forth is AI. AI is a hot topic in the world right now, but very much so in our community. And there's a lot of confusion about what we're talking about when we talk about AI. So I'd love to get your take and insight on, like, how are you defining AI? How are you leveraging AI to help you get closer to more of the things that you want in less time, with less effort, and with less risk?
So first off, if I say that I've been the CEO of an AI company since 1991, if we looked at what we did in 1991, people would, that's not AI. Well, but people are going to look at whatever the state of the art is today, and in 5 years, they're going to say, that was nothing. Yeah, but starting and doing something is not nothing. Right? Nothing is nothing. So I am not a academic supporter of this is AI and that's not. If it frees you as a human to be more human, then it's AI, because in a sense, some technology did something that a human used to. And so automation and innovation in and of themselves are okay for me. I could solve a problem mathematically. I could solve a problem using common sense. I could use game theory. I could use behavioral economics. And if I talk to an expert at any of those things, they're going to say that's the right way to do it. But you know what AI lets me do is have a perspective of all perspectives, and then say, so if I create a bot that does it mathematically, and one that does it statistically, and one that's using behavioral economics, and another that's using the wisdom of the crowd, or the first answer that we did with 100 other techniques, then I can start to compare those things. And in Buddhism, you know, they call it mindfulness. It's it's the non-attachment to one way, and saying, so which of these is better? But really, it's a form of enlightenment by saying there's no one path. And so machine learning versus deep learning versus simple algorithms versus, I don't care. What I care is that you get started and you start to think about, did it help me do what I already did? What could I do or should I do? And then how do I make it simple enough to scale? And so for me, AI doesn't mean artificial intelligence anymore. It means amplified intelligence. And when I think about that, realize I already said nobody cares what the entrepreneur does. So I'm not going to explain to you the technique that I use to do it, because what you would hear is want, 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 want. Instead, what I'm going to do is try to make you greedy for the result and say what amplified intelligence is about is you being able to make better decisions, take smarter actions, or continually improve performance. So where would you want to do that? And what would the evidence of success look like? And all of a sudden, we start to think about the capabilities we need to build. And the goal is the minimum viable capability. And to think about it modularly and say, so how do I continue to add to that so that it sucks less and we do more?
That's really, it's a really unique and very clear-eyed, sensible way of looking at things around this discussion about AI. And I love that idea that AI just helps human beings do human things with greater efficiency and effectiveness. Is that a fair take of what you're saying?
Yeah, and frankly, AI and automation allow you to see the bigger picture. It starts to give you strategic certainty that says, if I do this, I know I'm going to be making progress. But then you have to be able to learn and grow and say, well, the world changed, and that technique that used to be my best technique has started to decay. Edges decay, right? And so you have to fortify that and say, I don't just want an advantage, I want a sustainable competitive advantage. And in order for something not to be situational but perpetual, it means it's going to involve change or evolution. So this is a process, not a destination. And you got to get started. By the way, that QR code will not only get you a download of some stuff that we've written about this, but I send out a weekly list of the stuff I read. And the interesting thing is, even though I run an AI company and we have AI processes to do that, this is a hand curated list of the stuff I read. And I mention that because it represents something that I think is important. You don't want to use AI to automate your unique ability, the thing that you have superior skill that gives you energy. You in a sense, I call that the magic. You don't want automation or AI to replace the thing that's magic for you. And for me, reading all that information is the raw material for thinking about those things. And it's how I invent the next set of stuff. So I can't be a vision caster without vision, right? I can't. And so I don't want to automate away that. It might be that there is a process that would automatically send out that newsletter where I didn't have to spend the literally tens of hours that I do every week doing it, except I don't do it for the newsletter. The newsletter is a strategic byproduct of the fact that I do it to be me. It's part of the strategy of learning and growing. And somebody could say to me, oh, but you could have ChatGPT summarize all those articles and only look at what's left. And then it could find the connection. And that's great. That's using it as a thought partner. But I still have to think myself. And I don't want to pretend that it should do that for me. Now, maybe it should do that for somebody else who's actually really good at building things or polishing things. There's many different forms of intelligence, right? One is not necessarily better than the other, but the thing that's your superior skill that gives you energy, you want AI or automation to magnify it, to spotlight it, to help you do more of it, not less. And so I'm looking at using AI to eliminate bottlenecks, constraints, frustrations, bother. Any place there's frustration or bother is a great place for AI.
Yeah. Well, you just said something that this would be so illuminating for our community here. You're talking, I love this frame of AI you shouldn't let AI do the thing that's your superpower, your uniqueness. We call it the difference only you can make. But what advice, if any, or what insight, if any, would you have for someone that is still trying to, like, they're using AI just because they can, but maybe not because they should, because they haven't identified that that differentiating value proposition that's within them, the thing that they are the best in the world at. How do people get clear about that? And does AI have a role in helping reveal that for ourselves?
I actually believe energy is the most important thing to measure. And what you got to figure out is it lighting you up and making you more? Or as you start to think about and do these things, is it making you less? Mm-hmm. So the interesting thing is we use AI more as a sensor than as a robot, meaning most people think you want to do something, but I have a lot of algorithms that can do something that we measure what it would have done had we given it real money. And I'm using it so that I get a better sense of, out of the thousands of ways of doing this thing, this is the one that's filling the cup and this is the one that's draining it. I don't actually, so even a trading system that's losing money might be the most valuable thing in our process today because it helped us avoid something that would have been disastrous. I start to look at the technology almost the way I would hire a person. Do you want to build a technology that does the work? Or do you want to build a technology that helps you do the work? Or do you want to build a technology that checks the work to make sure that something? So do you want it to be skeptical or supportive? Do you want it to be a specialist or a generalist? Do you want it to be bold or timid? Do you want it to be front stage or backstage? And you're building different things. But as you're starting to do this, you also should use it to say, which of the things do I want to go deeper on? Where am I spending too much time where I should be doing this or the other? That's actually helping you figure out what you're becoming versus what it should do. And then you start to separate the role and the goal and the verbs. But again, you want AI to be autonomous in the stuff that makes you sleepy, that makes you tired, that makes you want to be anywhere else, where you chew your arm off to avoid doing it again. That's a great place for technology. But I would give you the same advice in a business. If you have a to-do list of, if you've been in a business for a long time, you could look in my Asana, which is where I keep a lot of these tasks. And there are certain things that literally have 1,000 tasks. Well, if I organize that a certain way, it would be the job description of someone who's not in the company. Right. And you have to admit, I'm never going to do that, or I wouldn't have 1,000 of those things lined up. But it doesn't mean that we as a company don't have to do it. And the question is, do I find a physical, real person who to be in charge of some of that, or do I create digital who's to do some of that? But interestingly, the place where I have 1,000 to-dos but no activity is something that I'm interested in but not responsible about. The other thing is, there are certain areas of the company that I should have to-dos and I don't. And so I actually look at the growth of this to-do list, or the stagnation of that to-do list, as a different way of seeing where I need a who. I need a who to think about stuff that I won't think about, as opposed to stuff I think about but won't do. It's a very big distinction.
Yeah. I love that. It really seems to rhyme with the process we have in terms of this kind of finding out, what you're supposed to be doing. Is we call it a zest barometer. If you consistently find yourself exhausted or depleted by something, you're either doing the wrong thing or doing the thing wrong, and you have to kind of figure that out. But as you get clearer about who you are and what you're good at and where you belong and where you want to go, what I'm hearing you say is that the AI can start to take on some of those things that, as your goals and roles are emerging and you're becoming, the AI can take care of some of the things that are actually taking you out of your strengths and out of your skill set, and help propel you forward.
So Dan Sullivan in Strategic Coach teaches a concept that basically says most people look at what they're good at and what they're not and try to get better at the stuff they're not good at.
Right.
But all that results in is slightly stronger weaknesses. The real goal is to become extraordinary at the stuff that's your tendency and find a way to outsource, delegate, or automate the stuff that you're not going to be good at. So, so much of what I do is think. And for me, thinking is doing.
Mm.
And that's very hard to explain, especially to my wife. But I'm actually good at it, and it gives me energy. And if you're good enough at the thing you're good at, then you can afford to have other people be outstanding at the stuff that they're outstanding at. And it creates a much better set of possibilities and opportunities for you.
Yeah, I love that. Well, we are coming to the end of our time together. You've already delivered several insights that I'm sure will inspire people tuning in that want to make a bigger difference and want to get better at finding their superpower and leveraging that to make a difference in the world and have an impact and make a better living. If there's something that you've shared already that you'd like to amplify, or a piece of advice that you would share, it can be a quote, it can be an exercise, whatever comes to mind, Howard. If someone is ready to take a bolder step into possibility and their potential to level up, make a difference, and do work that matters with people they care about, what would you share with them?
Focus on what you want, not what you don't want. Figure out something that you can do that moves in that direction. You can always modularly expand and make it better, but figure out something that counts as a victory and achieve it so that you can raise your hands, take a deep breath, and know that you've made progress towards what you want. So what you do is you say, this is what I did. This is why it's significant. Here's what that makes possible. And here's what I'm going to do next. And so it's emotional alchemy, where you're taking the confidence and the momentum of where you are to continue to move to where you want to be.
Emotional alchemy. That is absolute genius. Thank you for that, Howard. And thank you all for tuning in. Howard and I really appreciate the gift of your time and attention. We hope that today's broadcast motivates you to take a bolder step into possibility, to keep going with defining, developing, and delivering the difference only you can make. You can visit creativeonpurpose.com. If you're watching on YouTube or social media, please drop a comment with a question that you have or an insight that you gleaned from this broadcast. And if you're listening as a podcast, please drop us a 5-star review and a text review. It really helps more of the right people collide with these conversations and the insight and inspiration my guests are sharing. Now, take the insight and inspiration from this conversation and go out and play your game all in and full out. Howard, thank you so much for the gift of your time and expertise and everything that you shared today.
Thanks.